Okay, brothers and sisters, I don't want to keep you waiting. I thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Fran Turner. I am the Legislative and Political Action Director for CSEA. And tonight we are joined by Josh Terry, who is our Legislative Director. And we're glad that you could join us tonight. We hope you find this webinar useful. While this is live tonight, it will be posted on our website tomorrow. So please tell your coworkers that they can watch it at any time, and we hope we give you some real useful information. We wanted to do this webinar on the pension system to give you a better understanding of what the pension system looks like, what it is composed of, where in fact it came from, some current issues we are doing right now with the pension system, and some questions that you have. Many of your questions were forwarded. If you have more questions, just put them in the chat box and we will try to get to as many as we can. So let's start with a little bit of history and overview. We often refer to the system as the common retirement system. And for those of you that don't know, it's actually two separate systems under the common retirement system. You have the New York State and local government employee retirement system, which most of us belong to. And then you have the police and fire retirement system, which is for the uniforms, the firefighters. I should note at this time that New York City has separate pension systems and the teachers have a separate pension system. So when we talk about the pension system for the CSEA members, we are talking about the New York State and local government employee retirement system. Collectively, we refer to it as the New York State and local retirement system. There are over 1 million members, retirees, and beneficiaries in our system, and over 3,000 state and local government participating employers. Here's a little breakdown of the employers in our system. When we say other, we're talking about judiciary, possibly public benefit corporations. If your employer is in and opts in to be in the pension system, then you must participate. You don't have a choice anymore of whether or not to participate. In order to earn a pension, you have to be vested. Now, some people in the employee retirement system vest after 5 years, and newer employees have a 10-year vest. We will explain vesting later on, but just a little introduction to some of these terms. So where did the New York State employee retirement system come from? The system was established by statute in 1921, and it first started with just state employees. It wasn't until the following year in 1922 that local governments, counties, cities, towns, and villages were into the system. In 1938, and we often talk about this, voters approved an amendment to the New York State Constitution which prohibits our pension benefits from being diminished or repaired. So what does that mean? That means if you are in a tier and you are accruing benefits in that tier, they cannot go backwards and take that out. You continue to accrue a tier. Because the New York State employee retirement system was established by state law, by legislation, it can only be changed by legislation. That's the way it goes. In 1967, we created the police and fire retirement system. Prior to this, everyone was in the big system, and then police and fire moved out, but it's still under the employee retirement system. So we are the New York State local retirement system. So let's talk about what type of benefit this means. Our retirement system is what we often refer to as a defined benefit. That means when you accrue benefits, and based on your years of service and your final average salary, when you retire, you will receive a monthly check in a defined benefit. You don't have to worry about investments. It is going to be set out for you. It is going to be calculated based on your years of service, your final average salary, and the multiplier for every year of salary. This is different from a defined contribution, which is like a 401k program. A 401k program is an individual plan where many individuals contribute to the plan. In some instances, the employer also contributes amount to a 401k, but there is no specific benefit amount. So when you retire, you have all this money in your 401k, and you take it out gradually as you need it. But hopefully you don't use it all as once, because once that money is gone, it's gone. You're not going to get a monthly check. That's what a defined contribution means. So we are very lucky that we have a defined benefit, because you accrue benefits and those benefits will stay with you for your lifetime. So we have the controller. Before I get to this, I want to tell you that the controller is the sole trustee of our pension system, and currently our controller is Tom DiNapoli. We're going to talk about the duties of the controller as the sole trustee. He makes all of the decisions about how the fund is administered. He does not make the decision of your benefits or what you accrue in benefits. That is done by legislation. So Josh just put up, how is your pension funded? So 27% believed by employer contributions, 29% employee, 45% investment returns. And I will say to the 45% that you are right, that that is the largest part of our pension system. So many of us contribute to this pension system. And the pension system is made up of those three components. It is employee contributions, which are about 2%. It is employer contributions. It is investment returns. So let's go to employee contributions. That makes up 2%. From April 1st, 1998 through March 31st, 2018, employee contributions amounted to only 2% of the growth of the fund assets. Not a lot. I know when we pay the money into the pension system, you think you are funding most of it, but your employee contributions only make up 2% of the growth of the fund. For employers, their contributions account for 24% of the growth of the fund assets. Now let's talk about employer contributions a little bit. Right now, the employer contributes 14.6% of their payroll for pension costs. So for every employee that is employed and earning pension credit, it is 14.6% of payroll for pension costs. Years ago, when the system was so overfunded, employer contributions were down to 0. But we decided to change that as they changed tiers, because we didn't think it was fair that employers, because the stock market was doing good, didn't have to contribute at least a minimum. So the minimum contribution rate right now for employers is 4.5%. It can never go lower than that. Your contributions are set by statute. They're set by legislation. For Tier 6, there is a tiered system, but for everyone else, you know exactly what is coming out of your paycheck for your pension and what you are funding. Every year, the controller will estimate what he expects the returns on investment in the pension system to be. So right now, the rate of return that is expected is 6.8%. And that is from all the returns. That is from the investments, from the employer contributions, from employee contributions. If in fact the rate of return is higher than 6.8, then the employer costs can go down. Not your costs, which are fixed, but the employer cost. If the rate of return is less than 6.8%, then the employer cost goes up. So regardless of what happens, your contributions are set in law and do not change, but employer contributions do in fact change. From April 1st, 1998 through March 31st, 2018, 74% of the cost of pensions was paid by the fund's investment returns. So I said to you before that the controller is the sole trustee. He surrounds himself with advisory committees and has experts that make and determine what investments they will invest in to get the largest return they can for our system. So right now, our system has over $216 billion in it. 74% of that is related to investment returns. Every year, and last year especially, the comptroller paid out over $13 billion in benefits to retirees and other beneficiaries. This money is in the fund to pay for current and future retiree benefits. It cannot be used for benefit enhancements. What does that mean? Well, let me do the investments first. What is the fund invested in? All different things. Private equity, real estate. You may recognize it may be invested in Microsoft and Apple and Amazon and Johnson & Johnson, international companies like Honda, Toyota. It also has a portion of fixed income, 23% of this fixed income. That could be bonds, municipal bonds. It's invested in international equities as well as US equities. It is a mix of investments, and it is so big and so diverse that it maintains a very steady pace. So we have over $216 billion in the pension system. What can it be used for? The pension system can only be used to pay out benefits to retirees and beneficiaries, or to invest to grow the value of the fund. So we have all this money. It cannot be used to make better benefits for anybody. It cannot be used to enhance benefits. It cannot be used to pay the cost of an enhanced benefit for early retirement. It cannot be used by the state or the legislature to borrow against. It cannot be used for state expenses. It can only be used to invest and grow the value for future retirees and beneficiaries, and to pay out those benefits to retirees and beneficiaries. This is very important, and it's important that we have a sole trustee that we can trust, that makes sure that nobody dips their hand into the pension system. And the reason that we say that we are 96% funded is because if everybody left today, and all those that have earned benefits were expected to get benefits, we are 96% funded. That means 96% of those benefits would be paid. It is our goal to get to 100%, but for your information, we are the second best funded defined benefit program in the United States. So we're doing pretty good. So when I said that the pension fund can't be used to enhance benefits, you know, there are oftentimes legislative initiatives introduced that would increase a benefit for a certain class of people, or create a greater benefit for a certain class of people, like a 25-55. Any legislation that is introduced in the state legislature that changes or that amends the retirement and Social Security law to grant a better benefit has to have what we call a fiscal note on it. The fiscal note is basically an estimate of what is this going to cost to implement this benefit change. The fiscal note is done by the Comptroller's office. We send it to the Comptroller's office, they put a fiscal note on it. They have all the information of who is in the system, who would be affected by any particular bill, and they determine what the proposed cost will be. Obviously, fiscal notes are very important. We cannot pass legislation improving benefits in our state system or by state legislation without a fiscal note attached to the bill. So right now we have 6 tiers. So why do we have 6 tiers? I said to you at the beginning that the state constitution provides that your tiers cannot be diminished. So once you are in a tier and you are earning benefits pursuant to that tier, they cannot change that on you. If you are in tier 4 right now, earning benefits right now, they cannot change the provisions of tier 4. So as time went on, and some of these, in certain years when the pension system was expensive, they started enacting new tiers. And they can only do this going forward. So if they want to decrease a benefit, or the way a certain tier is giving you benefits, they have to do legislation, create a new tier. And yes, we are up to tier 6, which is a shame. You will see that most of the members of the employee retirement system are in tiers 3 and 4, but we are gradually growing tier 6 as well. Only the legislature and the governor can do legislation to improve the tier. It's got to go through both houses of the legislature. It's got to be signed by the governor, and only they can create a new tier. You know, over the years, we have managed to improve tier 4 benefits for our members. This is before we had tier 4 and 5. And when things are good, it's kind of easy to do, but right now we're facing current status and issues that I want to talk about. I know some of them are going to be very important to you, but every time we try to do a retirement bill, there is a cost that is attributed to a retirement bill. And who pays the cost? The employers pay the cost. The employers pay the cost because what they contribute to the pension system is not fixed. Your contribution to the pension system is fixed, but what the employers contribute is not. So if we try to do a bill to give everybody a 25-year, 55 out pension, the employer would have to pay the additional cost. That additional cost is spelled out, and what I said to you was a fiscal note. So right now, we are very well funded. We are the second best funded pension plan in the country. We hope to stay that way. And one of the reasons we stay that way is because the investments are doing well and the employers pay their bills, and we obviously make our contributions as well. So we have some current issues that we want to talk about that we are trying to get done. And a lot of those current issues are around tier 6. We weren't happy with tier 6. Many of you fought it with us because we believe that our members work hard and you deserve a good retirement and dignity in retirement. And tier 6 came in at a horrible time when the state wasn't doing well, when we were facing a deficit, when local governments were in deficit and said they couldn't pay their bills. So basically, tier 6 made changes that weren't as good as tier 5 or tier 4. Every time we do a tier, it's usually not as good, unfortunately. So we are trying to change some of the provisions in the tier 6 proposal. And one of the things that we're trying to change is the salary threshold. So under tier 6, depending on your salary, you will contribute 3, 4, 5, or 6% of your salary to the pension system. So whenever you get a salary increase, you may get thrown into a higher level where all of a sudden you're paying more into the pension system than you did the year before. So maybe you went from paying 3% into the system to paying 4% into the system. Well, we have put in a bill that says we want to have an automatic escalator on these salary thresholds so that your automatic salary increase doesn't automatically throw you into the next level. And we have put that bill in. The bill number is Senate 5842A, Assembly 7249A. And we are trying to see if we can get that changed just to loosen up these salary thresholds a little bit to make sure that your contributions stay as low as possible. We are also trying to change the multiplier. So what is the multiplier? The multiplier is the amount you earn every year in the pension system. So for instance, in tier 2, it was 2% a year flat out. In tier 4, as long as you work 20 years, it was 2% a year. You had to work 20 years to get that 2% a year multiplier. Unfortunately, in tier 6, they reduced that to 1.65. So you don't have as great a multiplier as the previous tiers. And we would like to get that changed so that your multiplier is as good as the previous tiers to help you make your pensions a little bit better. These bills, I will be honest with you, they're tough to do. They have fiscal notes on them. I will tell you that right now, while you have bill numbers in front of you that you see, those bill numbers will change next year because in a new legislative session, they have to be reintroduced. We will try to fight for these changes because we do want to improve Tier 6, and we think it's important that we improve Tier 6 for all of our members, especially as this is the tier where all new members come into. So hopefully we can be successful at some point in time in getting some of these things done. Some of the other issues we're facing, and we try to talk to our members about this, is divestment. So there are members of the legislature that have put in legislation that would direct the comptroller of the state of New York to eliminate all investments in fossil fuel companies. And while we all agree that climate change has to be addressed, what we don't agree to is allowing the legislature to dictate to the sole trustee what investments he can make. Because once you open this door, then they would be able to tell the comptroller what investments to make in other areas. The comptroller of the state of New York surrounds himself with investment advisors and experts to determine what investments are going to give us the best return. And the comptroller has come up with a program to slowly divest from the fossil fuel companies. This legislation would make him do it immediately, and we are not in support of that. And we are not in support of the legislature or the governor having any role in the pension decisions, because that's a slippery slope to go down to, and that could be very dangerous. And especially if you know our legislature and our governor, that could be dangerous. We don't want them dictating pension decisions. We are very happy with Tom DiNapoli making those pension decisions. And because he has been so good at making them, we are the second best funded defined benefit system in the United States. One other issue I want to talk to you about, and I'm sure you're waiting for this, early retirement incentives. So everybody asks every year, is there going to be an early retirement incentive? And every year we say we don't know, we haven't heard. What is an early retirement incentive? Usually it is used as a workforce management tool. When layoffs are proposed and when layoffs are imminent due to severe deteriorating economic conditions, sometimes they will come up with an early retirement incentive. The idea of the early retirement incentive is for those people who are already eligible, that may be in prior tiers, that are at the top of their salary. It is beneficial for them to take some credit if they offer credit, additional years of service, and we can reduce those high salaries, and we can then bring in new people at a lower salary, at a lower starting salary, and at lower tier. This supposedly is supposed to save money for the workforce, for any local government or for any state. So it is a tool to get people to leave that are usually older, higher paid, that are eligible for retirement. And it can provide additional pension credit, or it can waive penalties before retiring if you meet a certain age or a certain years of service. And when we do ERIs in New York State, they are proposed by the governor. So while we do have some bills hanging out there right now that have been proposed by individual legislators, the real ERIs come from the governor. And they come from the governor because there is a cost attached to doing an ERI. Remember, an ERI is affording whoever takes it additional benefits. So those additional benefits cost money. And it is the employer that is going to pay for those additional benefits. And if local governments opt in, because usually when we write or when they do a state ERI, the local governments and participating employers have the option to opt in. That means they are going to pay for anybody that takes it that is going to get an additional benefit, or that is going to get a penalty waived. So they come from the governor. He is usually always the one to propose an ERI. And yes, well, assembly members and senators can introduce a bill, it doesn't make it real. So we are watching this very carefully. I can't tell you whether or not there's going to be an early retirement incentive. I can tell you that, yes, our economic conditions are really suffering due to COVID, due to decreased income taxes, decreased sales taxes. We have a lot of people that are unemployed at the present time, which doesn't help our economy. But many of our local governments, not knowing whether the state is going to offer an early retirement incentive, have done incentives of their own. And they can do incentives of their own, but they cannot change the retirement and Social Security law. What they can do is offer a cash buyout. So for instance, if you have 30 years of service, there may be a municipality that will say, we will give you $1,000 for every year of service you have if you retire within 30 days, or every municipality can do it differently, but it is a cash buyout. It does not amend the retirement and Social Security law. It does not require a fiscal. In the past, our early retirement incentives abolished positions. The reason they abolished positions was they didn't want local governments or the state to pay for a better benefit and then bring in new workers. So a lot of times they abolish positions, and we are not in favor of that because it just means that the workers that are left are doing more with less. It is very hard for our members who are left, who are not eligible perhaps for the ERI, to pick up and do more work, especially when we are so lean. So there are a number of individual retirement bills that the legislature has introduced. We have one from Senator Griffo that would allow people to retire with 50 years age old with 25 years of service, or 55 with 10 years of service. We have another one by Abinante and Martinez that would make everybody have a 25-55, which the fiscal on that is huge. We have other ones that waive age and service requirements. But as I said to you before, the early retirement incentive comes from the governor. It has always been proposed by the governor. So I can't tell you whether or not it's going to happen. Only time will tell. But it is what it is. So I am going to go to some questions that we had asked people to provide us with before this, when we announced this webinar. And I'm going to go through these. But if you have more questions, please put them in the chat room, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible. So the first question I have: could a governor's executive order change the amount I receive in my pension after I retire? The answer is no. Once you earn those benefits in the pension system that you are in, or in the tier you are in, it cannot be diminished. It cannot be taken away. It cannot be lessened. If you're a retiree, you might be entitled to a COLA where it can go up every year by a certain amount, but they can never, the governor cannot issue an executive order to change what you receive in your pension. And in fact, you couldn't even have state legislation that takes away what you receive in your pension. That is not allowable by our Constitution. Second question: do I have to take my pension when I retire, or can I leave it until I am age 62? You can leave it. And for some pensions, you are required to not take it until age 62, unless you want to take a penalty. However, when you retire from state service, it is also tied to your health insurance. So if you were to leave state service prior to being 62 and waited to collect your pension until 62, it could in fact affect your health insurance benefits. And for that, I would refer you, before you make a decision to do that, you want to talk to the controller's office. At the end of this webinar, we're going to give you all types of links where you can look up your tiers, what's in your tiers. You can see examples of how they calculate what your benefit may be, but you can leave it there. And as we said, for certain people, you can't take it until you're age 62. Okay, the next question. Has part of the pension fund been used for COVID needs? No, the state has not borrowed any money from the pension system. They're not allowed to borrow any money from the pension system. They're not allowed to touch that pension system for anything. The only thing you can use that pension system for is to pay benefits to beneficiaries, to retirees, and to make investments. That's all you can use it for. Okay, next question. How does my 2% pay cut this year affect my final average salary? Okay, it can affect your final average salary. For instance, for Tier 4 employees, we look at the 36 consecutive months that you had the highest pay. Obviously, if your highest pay would have been higher when you had the 2%, that is going to be calculated. It is our position that if you were to retire before the 2% is paid, because remember the 2% is merely deferred, and we are confident that it will get there sooner or later, they would have to recalculate your pension. You are entitled to have that 2% counted in your final average salary for retirement purposes, because that could affect your final average salary. Next question. Okay, I would like to know if New York State is considering offering a retirement incentive for local government employees. I think we covered the ERI. If there is an ERI, there is always a provision for local governments to opt in. That doesn't mean they have to opt in. That means they can opt in. And they opt by the legislative body that determines whether they want to opt in or not. And obviously your county exec and your local elected officials would be the ones that would determine whether they could afford to opt in. Next question. If I have a teacher retirement pension, can I collect from both? Yes, you can. Someone can collect two pensions from two different systems. If you earned and you vested in both systems, then you are allowed to collect from both systems. I talked to you before about vesting. That means you have to be with an employer for a certain amount of years before those years count towards a pension. So for Tier 6 members, you have to vest in 10 years. If you stay for 10 years, you are vested. For Tier 4 members and prior, it was a 5-year vest. But in order to accrue benefits, you have to vest. Okay. Josh is also handing me questions as we go along, so bear with me. Can the state or government get into our fund? I assume that means can they get into our fund and use the money in the pension system for their own purposes? No, they cannot. Some of you may remember back in 1994, they tried to change our fund and they tried to steal money out of the fund, and it was a lawsuit brought by CSEA. And it was against the state legislature and the controller, and we referred to it as PUC. And we won that PUC lawsuit, and that lawsuit said you cannot touch the money in the pension system. That money is our money. That money is your money. It is what you have earned for putting in your years of service and doing your jobs. Can a buyback of prior service move a person from Tier 5 to Tier 4? No, it cannot. You can buy back in certain circumstances, but it does not move you from one tier to another. Is there an option for lump sum payments once you retire? In our defined benefit system, there is not an option for a total lump sum payment. This is something that I would say you should talk to the controller's office about it. There are a lot of options as to leaving the survivor benefits and what you can take for your pension, but there is no lump sum. They're not going to pay you the total cost of what your pension would be reduced down to a lump sum. This is why we call it a defined benefit, because every month you are going to get a check. Every month you are going to get a check for the rest of your lives. They do not pay lump sums. How are we doing, Josh? Tier 5 was 5 years. Yeah. Okay, here's the next question. I'm consulting with Josh here. Tier 5 vesting, how many years? Tier 5 vesting was a 5-year vest. We didn't go to a 10-year vest until Tier 6. Everything prior to that was a 5-year vest. There will be slides, the slides and webinar that we have done tonight will be emailed out to all of you tomorrow. And once again, this webinar will in fact be posted. And this webinar will be available for all of the members to view at their leisure. I please ask you to tell your coworkers. We hope that you've got a lot of good information from this and that it is something that you will share. And certainly if you have questions after this that we have not answered, please let us know. You can always email the Political Action Department. You can email me. It's fran.turner@csea.inc.org. And we will be glad to answer any question you have. Okay, someone just asked, what is final average salary? Final average salary computed in the pension system is your highest 3 years of service. So your highest 3 years may not be the last 3 years that you earned in the pension system. Maybe it is, maybe you changed jobs or you went to a different status and because maybe you didn't want to work that much or you took a different job that was more beneficial to you. It is your 3 highest years. For Tier 6, it is the average of your last 5 highest years. So they spread that out a little bit more in Tier 6. That is your final average salary. It is calculated by the controller's office. They are the ones that determine your 3 highest or last 3 years, and they will be the ones to calculate your retirement. And certainly, if you have any questions as to how they calculate it, those are questions that the controller's office will answer. There is a whole department that answers all these questions. They're usually very good. And they have a website for each tier for how to calculate the final average salary. We're going to give you those links to that website. In fact, Josh, if you could put them up, we'll give you those links. Office of the State Comptroller, you'll see the pension estimate. There's even an estimator there. And there's pension tier information, so you can look up the information that pertains to your tier. Is it true that it takes time to get a retirement benefit calculated? You know, I will say this. The retirement system is so busy that yes, it can take some time. So here's what usually happens. They usually do their best. You give them notice that you want to retire. You know, the more notice you can give them, the better off you'll be because it gives the controller's office more time to calculate your pension. But if you give them just the minimum amount of time and tell them that you are going to retire, they will usually give you an estimate of what your pension is going to be. You will start earning that right away, the month after, and sometimes 6 months later, they will re-estimate it. I can tell you that most times when the controller's office has to estimate your pension, that in fact, they usually estimate lower. So if they have to change it in 6 months, it usually goes up. They will always catch you up. They will give you what you earn from the minute you started your pension. But yes, they do give you an estimate at first because they are pretty busy and pretty far behind. So it's kind of hard for them to keep up. And you know, when you do talk to the controller's office, those are our members that do all the servicing there. There are members that you might be talking to on the phone There are our members that are working on the web, and there are members that may be answering a lot of your questions. I saw a question come up about Medicare Part B. Could it come up again? All right, do part-time employees have option to join? Yes, you do. You can still earn credits on a part-time basis. Now, let's talk about how you earn that benefit retirement. You earn it by the hours worked. So yes, part-time workers do in fact earn pension benefits. You will earn for as many hours as you work. Unless I see any more questions, comments, anything else, Josh? I hope you found this useful in your everyday lives. I know that pensions concern us all. We all deserve to retire with dignity. I appreciate you attending today's webinar. And as I said to you, this is going to be posted to the CSEA website tomorrow for on-demand viewing. So please encourage your members to watch it, get some information. At least go to the links in the controller's office, look up your tier, see what you're headed for. It's good information to have. And I saw that question come up again. Anyways, unless there's anything else and Josh is not giving me any more questions, thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you appreciate it. We also may be sending out an evaluation of this. I do have another question. If you sell back vacation time upon retiring, does it increase your final average salary? Your vacation time, you're talking about cashing out your vacation time. Your vacation time is already a part of your final average salary. So you're cashing out your vacation time is not going to increase your final average salary. Can I still, oh, okay. Can I still contribute to my pension after I don't have payroll deductions for it anymore? If you are in the pension system and you are working, you are contributing to the pension. If you are not working, you are not in the payrolls, you are not in the pension system, and you cannot contribute outside of that. So I'm not sure I understand that question. Okay, I have a question about contributions, but I don't know what that question is. Can I roll over years from one retirement system to another? You know what? I'm going to answer that with, that depends. That depends on what you're trying to roll over, where you worked previously. There are some provisions of the retirement and Social Security law where you do get prior credit for other work, but that is something that you have to check with the controller's office. I can't talk to you about your individual retirement system tiers or anything like that because I don't know all the information. Any chance of increasing COLA for higher than 18,000? I want to talk to you about that. So that is our COLA. All right, so right now, anybody retired 5 years or 62 after, and they have to be age 62, is entitled to a COLA on a yearly basis. It is determined by a certain index that was written into the legislation creating the COLA. But one of the things about the COLA is that it was based on a base pay of $18,000. So let's say the controller determines that you're entitled to a 1% COLA increase. That 1% is applied against the base of $18,000. And yes, we tried to put in a bill to increase that base. And what happened was the bill came back. Now, when you do a retirement bill that increases a benefit, it is the policy of the legislature and the governor. We're not going to do it for just the local government workers. We're not going to do it for just the state workers. We have to do it for everybody. If we're going to increase a benefit, we have to do it for everybody. That means the teacher retirement system, that means the police and fire, that means the city systems. And unfortunately, when in fact we put this bill in to raise the base amount, with all of the systems in the bill, the cost was over $1 billion. So we are not hopeful that we are going to get that done right away. That doesn't mean that we don't keep trying. You know, it took us 20 years to get a permanent COLA. So maybe it'll take us long to get that base pay up, but we will never stop trying to improve your benefits for retirees. That wasn't my question. When is the best time to retire? Beginning of the month or middle of the month or end of the month? I don't know the answer to that. I guess I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure it matters if they're calculating your final average salary. If I retire from full-time and start collecting the pension but return part-time, does my amount change? No, it doesn't. I don't have to contribute from my check anymore and I'm still working. Can I have additional monies added to my pension other than what I'm contributing because I am still working? Okay, so you collected your pension and went back to work. No, you cannot have additional money put into the pension system. You could, in fact, start your own IRA on the side, but you cannot put additional money into the pension system other than what you are contributing. No, I did not retire yet. Okay. You know what? I'm not sure I understand the question about contributing from your check anymore and still working. So I'm going to refer you to the controller's office to make sure you check that out. And you know what? It's a good idea for everyone to always check with the controller's office. Go to those websites, those links that we gave you, because they are very good. They explain things. They will show you how to calculate or look into what your pension may look like depending on where you are right now in now time. So definitely look into it. You know, some of you have the option of deferred compensation. Pam just put that up. And deferred compensation is a way where you can contribute more of your salary to the deferred compensation system. And that is where you contribute, it's like an IRA, it's like a 401k, so you can contribute your money. Hopefully the deferred comp system does well, so you can increase that money, and that is more additional money that you may have at the time of retirement for you to use. It is a very powerful tool. It's a great savings mechanism. I mean, some of you may over withhold taxes as a saving mechanism. When you get that over withholding, if you're not going to use it and you're in deferred comp, you can put that in deferred comp. There's a number of things you can do with it. That just enhances what you're going to be able to have at the time you retire. So that's all the time we have now. And like I said, if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to call us and don't hesitate to email us. We would be glad to help you. I'm so glad you participated, and I hope you found this helpful. So have a good night. Stay safe.